Welcome back to today's Explainer. So, you've been watching a ton of high-end documentaries, right? Or maybe those super cinematic interviews, and you're just sitting there wondering, how on earth does it look so polished? And then you look at your own footage, and let's be honest, you kind of look like a hostage on a webcam, even if you just dropped some serious cash upgrading your gear. Well, today we're diving into the absolute foundational secret of cinematography. Because here's the thing, that professional sheen you're desperately chasing, it actually has almost nothing to do with buying an expensive camera and literally everything to do with how you control the light. Okay, here's our game plan for today's agenda. We are going to hit the secret to professional video, decode the whole three-point lighting setup, and talk about controlling mood with ratios. After that, we'll actually build a DIY setup together, and finally we'll wrap up by going over how to avoid those really common beginner mistakes. Let's get right into it. Section 1. The secret to professional video. We are looking at flat versus cinematic imagery here. So seriously, why do professional interviews look so polished? When we see a breathtaking, truly three-dimensional shot, our brains almost instantly trick us. We think, oh, wow, no way, they must be shooting on a $20,000 cinema camera with some crazy state-of-the-art lens. It is so incredibly easy to fall into the trap of believing that gear automatically equals quality. But I promise you, if you take that exact same high-end camera and just, flip on the overhead fluorescent room lights, your subject's face is going to look completely flat, and you'll get those awful harsh shadows right under the eyes. Not a great look. So here is the real truth. It's not the camera at all. It is entirely about how you control the light. Professional filmmakers know you can take almost any scene anywhere, and by just carefully placing your light, you instantly add three absolute game changers: depth, shape, and separation. This is the bedrock of visual storytelling, guys. Without light control, the image is just lifeless. But with it, you are literally guiding the viewer's eye exactly where you want it to go. Moving right along to Section 2, decoding three-point lighting, and what we call the three crew members. Think of this setup like you're hiring three specific crew members for your set, and every single one of them has a very specific, critical job to do. First up, meet the boss of the set, the key light. This is your main illuminator. It's providing the vast majority of the light in your scene, and it ultimately dictates the whole mood. Now, you don't want to just blast this light straight into your subject's face. Instead, you're typically going to place it about 45 degrees to one side of the subject and slightly above eye level. Why do we do that? Well, it mimics the sun. It creates these really beautiful, natural-looking shadows that wrap around the face. That is what gives your subject real shape and physical dimension, rather than making them look like a flat cardboard cutout. Okay, so if the key light is the boss, the fill light is basically the shadow tamer. You usually place this one on the exact opposite side of the subject from the key light. But, and this is a massive, massive but here, you run it with far less intensity. You use the fill light just to soften the shadows that the key light just created. Listen, the ultimate goal here is absolutely not to remove all the shadows. If you use way too much fill, you just erase the dimension the key light worked so hard to create, and boom, you're back to a flat, lifeless image. But on the flip side, if you use too little, your scene might end up looking like some gritty, overly dramatic police interrogation. So the fill light, it is all about precise, careful control. And finally, crew member number 3, we have the backlight, which is frequently referred to in the industry as a rim light. This light shines directly from behind the subject, and its entire job? Separation. By creating this really subtle, thin highlight right around the subject's shoulders and their hair, the backlight literally pulls the person away from the background. This separation is the absolute magic ingredient that adds true cinematic depth. Without it, your subject can very easily just blend right into the wall behind them, and we definitely don't want that. So when these 3 crew members actually work together as a cohesive team, that is when the magic happens. Your key creates the shape, your fill comes in and controls the contrast, and your backlight adds that rich, cinematic depth and separation we all love. It's a beautifully simple yet highly flexible system. It's literally used by filmmakers all over the world for documentaries, short films, and high-end professional interviews. All right, jumping into Section 3, controlling mood with ratios, also known as the balancing act. So here's a really crucial point. Professional lighting isn't always perfectly, equally balanced. In fact, it's actually the imbalance that tells the story. We call the relationship between the brightness of your key light and your fill light the lighting ratio. So check this out. If there's only a small difference in brightness between your key and your fill, you get a really soft, low contrast look. It feels bright, open, friendly, perfectly suited for a corporate interview or a really upbeat YouTube explainer. But if you create a large difference, meaning your fill light is super dim compared to your key light, you introduce heavy shadows, and that gives you high contrast, intense drama at a much moodier portrait. You basically just choose the ratio based on the exact emotional story you're trying to tell. That brings us to section 4, building a DIY setup, or as I like to call it, use what you have. Okay, now we reach the truly empowering part of this explainer. I am going to prove to you right now that you do not need an expensive cinema lighting kit to achieve this exact same polished look. Because professional lighting, it's about placement, not price. Let's actually walk through an organic DIY setup step by step. Step 1, just find a standard window in your house during the day. Position your subjects so the window is at a 45-degree angle to them. Boom, you instantly have a beautiful, soft key light. Step 2, grab a super cheap piece of white foam board, honestly even a large piece of white poster paper works perfectly, and place it just out of frame right opposite the window. That board is going to bounce the window light back onto the subject's face, acting as your fill light to naturally soften those shadows. Step 3, take a normal, everyday small household table lamp and position it right behind your subject. Keep it out of the camera's view, pointing at the back of their head. And there is your backlight for separation. Literally, with just a window, a piece of foam, and a standard table lamp, you've completely mimicked a high-end Hollywood studio configuration. How cool is that? Let's move over to our final section, Section 5, avoiding common beginner mistakes and learning to embrace the shadows. Look, even with the absolute perfect window and the best gear, mistakes happen, especially when you're just starting out. So let's walk through these common pitfalls together so you can avoid them entirely. First up, placing all your lights directly in front of the subject. Please don't do this. It blasts away all the contours of the face and leaves you with a totally flat, lifeless image. Second, going way too heavy on the fill light and making it equal in intensity to the key light. Like we talked about, this just removes all your natural shadows, making the whole scene look completely unnatural. Third, forgetting the backlight entirely. If you skip this, say goodbye to your depth, your subject is just going to melt right into the background wall. And finally, the absolute biggest conceptual mistake of them all, thinking of shadows as a flaw that must be eliminated. Guys, shadows are not your enemy. Shadows are exactly what create depth, mood, and shape in your visual storytelling. Embrace them. As we wrap up these core concepts, I want you to remember this golden rule. 3-point lighting is a starting point. It is absolutely not a rigid rule that must always be followed no matter what. Many professional cinematographers will look at a location and decide to adapt, simplify, or even completely break this setup depending on the story they're telling. But you know what they say, you have to actually know the rules to break them effectively, right? Once you understand the foundational why behind each light's existence, key for shape, fill for shadow control, back for separation, you are totally free to get creative while still maintaining that incredibly polished cinematic standard. So I really want to leave you with this provocative question to ponder before your next shoot. Now that you know the foundation to truly control the light, how will you bend the rules to tell your story? Think about the mood, the ratios, and the exact depth you want to achieve. Seriously, go practice with a window and your table lamp today. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and hey, make sure to join us next time when we take these concepts outside to explore the absolute creative magic of natural light and the legendary golden hour. Keep experimenting, and I'll catch you then.